Lalitha, and to introduce myself, I'm a co-founder at ORO Labs, and I'm a certified procurement geek like many of you guys. The theme of our presentation today is to basically share our journey and why we are here doing ORO, and it's about what we had to unlearn to learn, and that has been a very core, I think, a defining experience for us as founders. So a little bit about myself. My journey in procurement started as a product manager at Ariba, and I was fortunate enough to work with a lot of large customers when they transitioned from on-prem to cloud. Many of you guys remember that still in your recent past. And what I learned was that the requirements actually change. The customers, what they wanted before, that changed when they moved to the cloud. Two things happened. Technology changed, but also the business operations changed. And what we want to do today is to really unpack this. So the first thing that I want to say is the hardest part of innovation that we learned is to really define the core problem. And that's what we're going to unpack now. Sudhir?
Hi. It's nice to be here at DPW, our first time here. As an introduction, I'm Sudhir Bhojwani. My journey started at Ariba as well. I spent almost 9 years, starting in 2010, as a senior software engineer. So yes, I'm a software engineer. I still write code, and I love it. And I'll write code till I die, I think, hopefully anyways. But this 9 years, 9 years back, in 2010, when I started the ORO Ariba journey, I had no idea what procurement was. I had never seen a purchase order. To be honest, I didn't know what a purchase order was. But in those 9 years, I had a chance to work with a lot of you. Some of you are in the room here. I learned what supplier management even meant. How do you manage 80,000 suppliers? I learned it firsthand. Direct suppliers are different than indirect suppliers. I learned firsthand from you why supplier onboarding is so complicated. Having talked to many, many suppliers on the network, I learned in what situation they want to participate in the network and when they don't want to participate in the network. But above all, what I learned is procurement actually impacts more people than we think. It impacts your business users. It impacts the suppliers. So the core problem that we've identified, and it has been the problem I've been chasing for 13 years, unfortunately, or fortunately now, is the user experience. And I can assure you, it's not about user interface. We can build a UI in 2 seconds if you want to these days, especially with GPT. It can generate the code, supposedly. It can, actually. So what we'll today do is share our experiences, our learning. The first learning I want to talk about is I love my dog. That's Moses, by the way. That's my 9-year-old Bouvier, and that's his girlfriend, Elsa. Now, why is Moses and Elsa on the screen as the first thing? I met Bob, who is a neighbor, while walking Moses at the dog park. And we were chatting. Bob tells me his role. He's a controller at a roughly $70 million company that provides IT services. He found out, unfortunately, I'm the CPO of SAP Ariba. And he was a supplier on the network. But more importantly, he told me something which had a profound impact on me. He said, why is it that when we work with large customers, after we have agreed the business terms with our business stakeholder, it takes us 2.5 months before we can start the work? What do they do so special that it takes 2.5 months after we've agreed the terms with the business stakeholder? Say, Sudhir, can you do me a favor? On the network, I'm happy to pay you whatever money it is, so long whatever they're supposed to do, I will do. So I can go faster. So this is really the story that I learned. What I learned really is, we've been preaching this diagram to everybody who listened to us ever. Source to pay. It must start with sourcing, go to contracts, so on and so forth. Here's some problem with this picture, though. To be honest, I drew this picture once upon a time. I could not be further wrong. In this picture, I made a profound mistake. I assumed 100% of the spend is between the supplier and the category manager. I assumed category manager is involved in every spend. And business user is simply sitting on top. That was a mistake on my part.
And in reality, what we learned is that more than 50% of the spend actually fits this pattern. It's very hard. We've all seen the crawling matrix. It's very hard in real life to really determine, is this really a strategic request? Is this a bottleneck item? So that was our first learning to say, spend when it comes or when it happens is actually hard to determine upfront. So the second thing that we learned is that the process is definitely not your beautiful chevrons in different blue colors and purple colors that we've seen. The process is neither linear and it's pretty ad hoc. It's not consistent. Depending upon who's driving it and what is the category, it can take its own path. It does touch all the requirements, but as you can see, the business user is working with the supplier, and it's not a linear process. This was the first learning that was a big, profound aha for us.
So this is the first story. We like telling stories. No more dogs, unfortunately. I have only one dog, which you already saw. So let's look at the tech buy story. We learned something different. Let me show you a business process, software purchasing process at a customer that we work very closely with. This is the process. It's a logical process for buying a software. Involves business governance, engineering governance, commercial negotiations, so on and so forth. Few things to notice about this business process. First, each of those steps are like a process in itself. Business governance is not approve, deny. It's a business process in itself, and it can take months to buy a software. The second question to ask is, do we execute this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in that order? Do we execute some of this in parallel? Answer is yes to all of it, but depends on the situation. That means we execute sometimes sequential, we execute sometimes parallel. Somebody called human being, some human being decides which of those steps get executed in what order. The only requirement is all the steps must be executed.
So what is the big takeaway here? The takeaway here is that there are many actors, and they all have a semantic job to do. They are not just approve, deny. There are responsibilities that they are accountable for, and there's artifacts that they have to produce, and this is the audit trail that the procurement has to essentially enable. All of this today often happens offline and is copy-pasted into some comments and notes, and that is how procurement record keeping happens. So this is the big aha for us to say, hey, this is not a tree problem with a bunch of approve, deny, and the first time somebody denies, it's done. It's actually a graph problem architecturally. That's a big aha for us.
I mean, this graph is of, I know if anybody, a lot of you are, a lot of people love tech. So this graph theory has been really amazing, how you implement a graph. Because obviously I come from a world where we had a workflow, but that workflow was implemented like a tree. Tree is not a graph, let's put it that way, because graph has a whole lot more problem. But the important point is, when you think about this problem as a graph, I'll show you what amazing problems we can solve, how we can deliver amazing user experience by thinking of it as a graph.
So then let's talk about data. And I was trying to think about how do I make it succinct? What is the question about data? And to be honest, really the question is, why is data so damn hard? It is really hard. So there are a couple of stories I want to share here. So this is a little bit of a rabbit hole experience that I had. We were working with a couple of customers, and this thing called checklist kept coming up, okay? And like most of us do, I did my Google thing, and I went down a rabbit hole. There are job descriptions in many companies' websites in the procurement department, which talks about global data steward, data verification expert. And then in many BPO company websites, there are service offerings around how they're going to essentially do this data stewarding, et cetera. And the examples that the customer gave us was very interesting. So there are a couple of examples that I have put up here. So if you think about vendor data, obviously some workflow, some tool is collecting, sub-supplier information, but then there's checklist which says like, oh, verify the tax ID, verify if there are duplicates in the ERP, verify if its vendor is active for the company code, verify if the vendor is on this list or that list, okay? This is all checklist stuff. The second thing is, if you look at a procurement checklist, it could be things like verify the purchasing org is right, the GL code is correct, the company code is right, is there actually money in the budget, right? These are all, if you think about it, man behind the curtain. I make a joke often to say, sometimes the real procurement is like you've seen the movie Men in Black, it's like the aliens in the mailbox. That is what the experience is. There's a bunch of people behind doing stuff. And what this taught me is that the checklist and the manual data process reveal a very ugly truth. And that truth is data is complex and it's manual.
Let's look at the other one. My favorite topic, unfortunately. A deep learning topic, I would say. Vendor data, I had no idea. I was happily living in Ariba land. SAP acquires Ariba. Finally, I got to see what vendor data looks like in ERP. Oh my God. Firstly, what I'm representing here is Kearney, could be any other company really, has duplicate vendor records. I've used to stand on stage at Ariba Live. Duplicate vendor records are bad, really bad. You should take care of it. I forgot. They might exist for a reason. Sometimes it's a mistake, but maybe they also exist for a reason. Oh, as it turns out, supplier happens to be a company which has its own legal structure. So you have some structure in your ERP with duplicate records and all kinds of stuff, and you have the company legal structure. These two worlds don't match. Why are we surprised suppliers have bad user experience? Why are we surprised business users cannot figure out which Kearney to use? So vendor data is actually the core. I think any procurement system that does not understand the vendor data, I personally feel should not qualify as a procurement system. But the truth is, most procurement systems actually do not understand the vendor data.
So the net of it is data is complex and it is not integrated, which is a big failure in terms of procurement technology today. So what is the report card? At the end of the day, unfortunately, we ain't doing too well in the world of procurement. And I talked to a procurement leader at a company, and they said that internally in the company, all the service teams, they had done an employee experience survey, and the NPS score for procurement, believe it or not, was lower than that for HR, which is pretty bad. Okay? So you would agree with that. So what can we do about it, and what is our vision?
See, again, our focal point is user experience. But user experience is a very complex topic. We'll try to unpack it a little bit. How can we solve the great user experience, and how we can make procurement awesome one day? So I thought, why not look at what has actually happened in technology since Gen 1 of procurement? Let's start with public cloud. It's accepted. Everybody knows Amazon, Azure, GCP, whatever. They're here to stay. But I'll give you an example of the impact that the public cloud has on a business like us. We're a small company, 3-year-old startup. We have data centers in North America and Europe. We can serve our European customers from European data center and North American customers from North American data center. It cost money, no doubts, but it was not hard actually. That's an impact, direct impact. Next impact, I want to talk about database. Why are we talking about database in a procurement conference all of a sudden? The truth is, customization is core part of any enterprise application. I've not met a single customer who has done zero customization on their purchase order. I've not met a single customer. All best of breed, I shall not do any customization, but there are customizations. And I don't think it's a bad thing either, to be frank. It's not a bad thing, in my opinion. It's a mistake to say it's a bad thing. But where does NoSQL databases come into play? It makes it easy to implement that. So for a tool like us, we are building the next generation, hopefully. It's easier. A lot easier. Likewise, think about microservices and APIs. You have to build composable apps that can use other APIs. Otherwise, you're talking yesterday. You have to build composable apps. And AI is, of course, something that we'll talk about in more details in a second. So let's talk about what is the impact of all this on procurement. We have seen all these tools. People have various opinions on these tools. I get that. Some people don't like the tools I used to own once upon a time. Fair enough. I get that too. But jokes aside, there are lots of tools here. Sourcing tools, contracting tools, operational procurement, so on and so forth. And these tools are growing. Companies have multiple tools, some tools to support indirect, some to support direct, and there are many other tools. And sometimes multiple tools to support different categories in indirect. So there are various tools. The problem is, what is the user experience? How does user know where to go even? How does user get visibility into their request? This is the core problem we believe that we need to solve properly. And that's where the core concept we're trying to come up here is orchestration layer, procurement orchestration layer. And we intentionally use the word procurement there. Two principles I have for this orchestration layer for it to be genuine and truth. First, don't try to be a suite. Don't try to do that everything that the other tools do. Then you will become as big as them. What's the point of the exercise? Is it even realistic? Short answer is absolutely not realistic. Second, It should not play favorites. That means it must integrate with everything without playing absolutely any favorites.
So the core tenets of the procurement orchestration layer, the first is user experience. Now, I will say one thing about user experience, which I think is the most important point. People like personalization. People need personalization. I don't know a single person who doesn't want a custom kitchen, okay? So what it means is that the cost of personalization has to be zero. You have to be able to deliver bespoke, personalized workflows. The second part is actually the workflow. The workflows have to be smart, meaning they have to be sentient, they have to be able to change in the middle of the flow, and they have to span across systems so the user is guided start to finish with visibility, with guidance, and all the personas know what role they're playing and how the workflow is going to work. And then?
There are two more things left here. If you look at the collaboration piece now, it's the heart of it. In my Bob story, one thing I learned from Bob, he said, can I do something that user is taking a long time to do? My sales guy will spend as much time as it takes to do it. Why not leverage Bob then? To answer a simple question, hey, which kearney to use? It's a way of collaboration. Collaboration in the day of Teams and Slack and everything is not simply texting. It's also actually making the process more efficient. Collaboration can be leveraged in a more amazing way. Last thing I feel has to be part of this orchestration layer. Everybody asks us the same question. I have a workflow engine. Why can't it be the orchestration layer? To me, to deliver amazing user experience, this layer must understand procurement. Vendor object is too hard. If you cannot understand vendor object, contracts, purchase orders, simple objects, and the complexities around them, it can never deliver great experience. And procurement semantic also helps in one more business way. It makes it actually easy to implement workflows. Makes it easy to make changes. It should not be that every change is a new IT project with a 6-month delivery time. It must be done in shorter period of time than 6 months, a simple change. So that's procurement orchestration layer to us. Of course, we haven't talked about AI, LLM, GenAI at all.
The elephant in the room.
Elephant in the room, if you will. Look, after leaving Ariba and before starting ORO, I spent a year and a half doing some other stuff. But my focal point always was NLP. I tried all tools, whether it's Stanford library, Berkeley library, all kinds of libraries I tried to make the NLP work, until we saw GPT. GPT is a game changer. GenAI is a game changer. But can it be simply used to do automation or something more? I fundamentally feel it is supposed to deliver humanized procurement experience. Remember the procure tech experience I showed you, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7? What I learned is those things are not executed in the same order every single time. They're not executed parallel either. It can go in all kinds of stuff. So we feel GenAI can make the process so amazing that users can make smart decisions, and it can tell the user what smart decisions it can make to make the process more efficient and deliver amazing experience.
So to wrap up, right? To deliver the procure tech for tomorrow that can be a sentient system, not just a cut a PO system, they need to enable better decisions. But to enable better decisions, good decisions need good data, right? So you need good data. But you do not get good data without smart workflows. So here we are. We are building the future for procurement. It's all about smart workflows which give you good data to enable better decisions. Cool. See you.